Translation is replacing a word in one language with a word in another, right? Spend a little longer thinking about it and you might be familiar with the idea that it's about translating meaning for meaning rather than word for word. How, for example, would you translate the British roast dinner? A dinner of roasted items doesn't quite convey it. Maybe you outline what goes into a roast dinner. Potatoes, nut roast, carrots, cauliflower.
Now, where's the cauliflower?
Cauliflower's not traditional, Dad.
Cauliflower is traditional!
Not everyone agrees what goes into a roast dinner. The translator's job is to decide what is going to work best, knowing their source language and culture, and the language and culture they're translating into. Where does the closest fidelity lie, in the word or the meaning of the text? Here are two translations of a roast dinner.
در انگلیس یه غذایی هست به نام ساندی روست که معمولاً روزهای یکشنبه خورده میشه. جزوش گوشته یا گوشت گاو یا گوسفند یا مرغ، آبگوشت، سیب زمینی‌های سرخ شده، هویج و یک چیز بسیار مهمی به نام یورکشایر پودینگ که مثل نون کوچیکیه که داخلش خالیه.
In generale, io rimarrei sul sicuro e tradurrei roast dinner come arrosto alle verdure, perché nonostante in Italia sia molto più popolare l'immagine britannica del roast beef, non è detto che il roast dinner preveda un arrosto di manzo. Quindi direi soltanto arrosto oppure arrosto di verdure, dato che le verdure sono una parte importante del roast dinner.
So you might already see some features within translation that we think of as artistic, a person using their creativity to represent an object in another form. That thought implies that art is the imitation of real life. We could also define art as expression of emotion, or we could define it as constructed by the institutions that surround it. Namely, art is art because we say it is. For our purpose today, luckily most of these theories can agree that literature is art. So, if we prove that literature cannot be separated from translation, then translation is art. When it comes to non-literary translation, subtitling, interpreting, and the everyday kind between people, that's an argument I'll have to make another day. But do notice how in language we might now say and believe that was art if someone does something creative and impressive. The argument that translation and literature are one and the same is today a four-part argument. Firstly, the process. The process of translating looks a lot like the process of writing. The person draws on instinct, experience, and habit. They adjust and find their way around the work, feeling the textures and shapes of the work and what fits best for each project. For example, did it occur to you that most translators only translate in one direction? They work in both languages, but you need skills other than understanding the language to translate. How aware are you of current slang and idioms? What way do you tend to phrase sentences? Questions that sound a lot like the questions writers ask themselves. Two things looking similar is no conclusion, however, especially not to fight off the long-held belief in English that a translation is inferior to the version in the source language. So, secondly, purity. There is no purity in the act of reading. You ever picked up a book and not been able to read it, and then pick it up at another point and love it? Read a book at 16 and then again at 36 and had completely different experiences? We bring ourselves to the reading experience. For that matter, the writer brought themselves to the text. Their intended meaning may not lie in an understandable way to anyone on that page or screen. It might be full of in-jokes. So, if when we read something we are already bringing all sorts of things other than the text to our reading experience, is there a difference if we add another filter? I don't think so, especially because a translator is probably the closest reader a text will ever have. The inherent lack of purity to a reading experience means that the belief that there is a first class of literature that is art and a second class of literature that is translation is a prejudice. We're all equally reading through layers. It's a prejudice often perpetuated in language teaching to motivate students to learn, which is ironic since those are the very people who are likely to become translators. What we should instead be saying is that there is value and there are use cases for reading original text, but they aren't superior to a translated text inherently. An example of use case is that if I was going to make Nelly Campobello my life study, I might need to know specific words she chose in Spanish to analyse her language use. However, in my current use case, I can read this book Cartuccio on my mother's hands and just love it. A third argument, indivisibility. The statement Segu is a work of art is one I feel entirely comfortable saying. To say Segu is not a work of art would be a lie. However, I have not read the text Maurice Condé wrote. I've read the translation. So when I say it's a work of art, I mean the translated edition. There is no meaningful way to split the English text into Segu and the translation. They are one and the same. Therefore, if Segu is art and you've only read the English, then the translation of Segu is art. More generally, we can't say only original language books are art and all translations are not. The literature, translation, and art seem inseparable. Finally, without translation, there is no literature. Our current literature knowledge in academia has been shaped by translated literature and knowledge. All writers in English have been shaped by translation. We wouldn't be able to have any books we have today without translation. An artist stands on the shoulders of giants. A translator stands on the shoulders of an author. So, a translator and a writer's job shares many processes. Reading is never pure. You can't separate out a work of translated literature into work and translation, and without translation, we wouldn't have literature. So, if literature is an art form, then translation must also be an art form. If you'd like to learn more about translation, come join us at Goyle Half this summer for a festival of translated literature and arts.